there, everybody. Happy Wednesday, not Thursday, as our global travel update continues our trip all across America. We traveled about 2,400 miles to be here. It might surprise you to know where I am. Look behind me. We are in Everett, Washington, at the Port of Everett, about 30 minutes away from Seattle in Snohomish County. And I'm up here doing one of our television shows for PBS. And of course, checking out a number of things. One thing I can recommend to you as you get your comments coming in, you know how to do that. We'll talk to you about all that stuff today. And I'll talk to you about where I was yesterday at a place called Payne Field. For those people who live in Seattle, you probably heard of it. For those of you who haven't, you're about to hear about it. But first and foremost, let's talk about some news items. Airfares are continuing to rise. However, there are some pop-up sales out there you need to know about. JetBlue's got one for fares as low as $39. You've got to book it by tomorrow. That's the 20th. You'll see Aer Lingus and TAP, that's the airline of Portugal, doing other pop-up sales to Europe as low as $380 round trip if you don't mind going through Lisbon or Dublin. But again, they're good through June or July, but you got to book them this week. Check that out. The rest of the time, it's crazy out there. The fares have not come down as much as they should have, although we're seeing something else happen in the South Pacific, because United Airlines just announced the largest South Pacific expansion of air travel in history, in aviation history. They're flying to Christchurch and Melbourne and Sydney and many other locations from the United States. That will get airfares to come down on an introductory basis. United Airlines is already the largest transatlantic carrier in the world, which means that those fares will come down. Remember I mentioned North Atlantic last week? You're still getting fares of under $500 round trip between the U.S. and London, whereas if you look at the legacy carriers, they're in the $1,200 to $1,500 range. So there's still some hope there if you want to do that. Remember that 3-day sale from JetBlue ends tomorrow with fares starting at $39. All right, let's talk about some other stuff that's a little disturbing to me. You know, we've talked about this on the air before, about places like Amsterdam and Manchester and Edinburgh and Venice trying to stop bad behavior, over-tourism, by the way, some of them are intertwined, by either imposing new taxes, new fees, or actually forcing bars to close 2 to 3 hours earlier. In the case of Amsterdam, forcing brothels to close 2 or 3 hours earlier. Oh, do you feel the pain? But seriously, it's getting worse because travelers are acting out in very bad ways. Somebody having sex at a sacred monument in Bali, well, that got them banned from the country and arrested. A couple having sex on the pyramids in Cairo, they're still in jail. A woman, and then there's like selfie stupidity. Let me do my diatribe on selfie stupidity. We did a segment, by the way, on the Travel Detective last year on PBS called Death by Selfie. How many people die every year trying to take a photograph of themselves? What makes everybody think that the definition of a quality photograph has to have them in it? That's nuts, all right? Well, the Bridge of Sighs in Venice is the Bridge of Thighs with everybody with their selfie stick. Everybody's posing. Guess what? In Portofino, in Italy, they're about to pass a law that you could get arrested and fined for posing for a selfie. I love it. I mean, enough is enough, all right? The reason why you're going somewhere is not to document your presence there. It's to be present there and to have those moments and to be contemplative and appreciative and have conversations. What a concept. And reach common ground with people who live there and learn and immerse yourself in the culture. Not to be able to Instagram your ass, if you know what I mean. All right, so listen to this. You want to hear bad behavior? We now have people posing in stupid poses on the railroad tracks at Auschwitz. Come on. 1.1 million people were murdered there. Should you go to Auschwitz? Everybody should. You know, there's a law in Japan that every school child has to go to either Hiroshima or Nagasaki at least once in their life because of the old saying that if you can't remember the past, you're doomed to repeat it. You need to know about it. One of the most emotional moments in my history of traveling happened at Auschwitz. It happened years earlier when I went with my dad to Dachau in Germany. But if you're going to go to Poland and go to Auschwitz, This is not a selfie moment. It's a self-thought moment. It's a reflective moment. It's a learning moment. And now the museum in Auschwitz is urging visitors to be respectful and not to do these stupid poses. I mean, Portofino again. It's just nuts. So that's my little diatribe for today on that. Let's go through some hellos here, and then we'll talk about other stuff that's going on in the news. All right, greetings from Cape Hatteras from Harriet and Jim. Camilla's, of course, in Tucson. Patrick is now in the port of LA. I saw your photo yesterday, Patrick, on Facebook. All right, Williamsburg, Virginia from Robin. Mary Jo Smith is saying, hello from Chester Springs, Pennsylvania. When should I book tickets for inter-Europe flights in June? Inter-Europe flights. Well, who says you have to book them online? Here's my idea. This is basically old school, but it works. Go to a newsstand where you live that may get foreign newspapers and get the Saturday editions of any of the British newspapers. That's where they run their travel sections, and in those travel sections are ads for inter-European flights that you won't see in the United States. On carriers you might not have even heard of or have flown, but the deals are great, all right? But then again, remember this, there's that UK user's tax for anybody leaving from a UK airport. So the smart thing to do is get your inter-European flights, if you're going to the UK, for example, get your inter-European flights from another country in Europe, take the train from London to Europe, to those other countries, and then avoid those taxes, okay? Hello, Scott from Chicago. Colleen said, I survived the Eurostar and I'm now in Paris. But a total glitch on using my Marriott points, I'll be sending you an email. Okay. Hello from sunny New Jersey, right back to you, Gail. Lorraine is saying, thanks for providing a time to relax and listen to good music. Okay. Piotr is saying, howdy, greetings from Kampen, Holland. Okay. Camilla's thanking me for my diatribe. Well, thank you, Camilla. Yeah, Pat agrees with me on posing for selfies. Bob, greetings from Boston Strong. That's right, they just had the marathon, and a very special anniversary at that. Mike is drying out in Fort Lauderdale. Karen, thanks for sharing that fun fact, Japan's requirement of Hiroshima. It's true. Leslie saying, hello from Leslie in Delray Beach. Weather is perfect today. Stop boasting. By the way, speaking of places to go, there's another reason why we're here in Everett, because I'm doing a story for my show, The Travel Detective, on the hidden gems of Snohomish and Seattle Country North. And yesterday, I spent some time at Payne Field. Let me explain Payne Field to you. When I first started coming up to Seattle, of course, you land at SeaTac. But if SeaTac is fogged in, and it sometimes is, they divert you to Payne Field, which was a pain. Not anymore. They've really upped their game at Payne Field. They've got a great terminal. They're now doing commercial airline service there. The terminal, by the way, looks like a beautiful living room. And people are nice, and there are no lines. The runway is extra long because, of course, they share Payne Field with Boeing, and they got to fly all their big planes out of there. And next to Payne Field is something called the Flying Heritage and Combat Armor Museum that nobody knows about. It's a relatively new phenomenon, but the cool thing about that museum, first of all, if you're an aviation geek like I am, you're there all day. But the cool thing about that museum is that everything in there has been restored to fully operational status. That means every B-25, every Messerschmitt, every Spitfire could be flown out tomorrow, and they often do fly. They even have a V-2 rocket in there, for those of you who remember those. They even have a V-1, which nobody remembers. And the crazy thing about the V-1 is that the Germans were perfecting both the V-1 and the V-2 at the end of World War II, and had they perfected it, the war would have taken a different turn. You also may remember that at the end of World War II, we got all those Nazi scientists. That's right, Nazi scientists, made them a deal, brought them to the United States, and they basically became the forefathers of the American space program. Remember Dr. Werner von Braun? Yeah, he used to be in the SS. But check out that V-2 rocket at the museum. They also have all the armor works, meaning all the tanks, all the howitzers, right? Now they fire blanks now, but they work. And yesterday, guess what I got to do? Run the picture. That's right. No, that's not General Patton. That's me. I'm driving a tank. I was driving it. Oh, wish I had that in my backyard. Anyway, I highly encourage you to go visit that museum because it's worth it. I mean, and the stories that are told there, I mean, the B-25 that I was in, that's a similar model to what Jimmy Doolittle flew off the USS Hornet in the most amazing World War II raid, the raid over Tokyo. When I was growing up, I read a book, which I highly recommend you read again, called 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. That B-25, they actually launched it off an aircraft carrier. Impossible, suicidal, but they did it. And they did a lot of them. Check it out. Amazing stuff, amazing videos. And of course, Paul Allen, who's very much involved in the museum, did his deep sea restoration work and exploration work, finding all the sunken battleships, all the USS Indianapolis and the Hornet, the carrier that Doolittle flew off. I mean, just amazing, amazing history there at the Flying Heritage and Combat Armor Museum, right there at Payne Field. It's a twofer. You can fly out with no problems and go next door and see the museum. It's definitely worth it. Now, let's go back to a couple things that are going on right now. I'm still not happy with what's going on with the airline frequent flyer programs. They're still bumping people out. They're still denying them the ability to redeem their miles. I'm a big fan right now of somebody coming to grips with a system that's gotten out of control. On one hand, it's a huge profit maker for the airlines. On another hand, it's not telling the truth. It's bordering on a clinical definition of fraud. You know, when you make a promise, and at the time you make the promise, you know precisely at the same time you make the promise that you're not going to keep the promise, you don't have to be a lawyer to figure out what case that represents, right? You're lying. You're perpetrating a fraud. I get on an airline and the flight attendants are hawking, you know, hey, get another credit card and get all these bonus miles, that the minute you get the miles, you get 2 free tickets. Yeah, good luck. No, 34 trillion unredeemed miles out there that may never be redeemed, even if the airlines weren't full. Because the airlines make too much money not redeeming those miles and replace them, of course, with revenue passengers. But that defeats the entire purpose for which these programs were started in the first place, to reward you for your loyalty. What am I missing here? I don't know. What I'm missing is the ability to redeem miles. And yet all of us want to earn miles for doing everything short of what? Breathing. And then what do you do? What do you do? Frame the miles? Go down to an art supply store and hang it on the wall? Well, there's some history there, but I don't think that's why you joined the program. I think it's time for one federal agency, based on this perpetrated fraud, I'm thinking the Federal Trade Commission, not to send a letter of caution or not to send a letter of warning, but to launch a full-fledged investigation as to the real numbers that we're talking about here. To give you an idea of how crazy it is, we are so addicted to these mileage programs. By the way, me too, right? We love getting miles, right? Do you know the Mileage Plus program, when it started, you know what a number of United Airlines executives used to call it quietly? Not Mileage Plus, Cocaine Plus, because everybody was addicted to the program. And yet now we've reached the point of severely diminishing returns, where the airlines have this contingent liability called unredeemed miles, which in the old days they figured, okay, nobody's going to care. Well, we care now, because none of us can redeem the miles. And if we do, they want an exorbitant level of miles in order to be eligible to get that redemption, assuming they're going to give you one in the first place, right? Asking 749,000 miles for a round-trip ticket between Atlanta and Santiago, Chile, which is, by the way, what they asked me to do, is absurd. Of course, I didn't redeem those miles, because that would have been playing into the same game of valueless redemptions, right? We all know how hard we worked, how much money we spent, sometimes buying things we didn't need at all to get to certain mileage levels, which now become meaningless. So I appeal to you as voters to talk to your elected representatives to see if the Federal Trade Commission will at least launch an investigation into programs, not just at one airline, at all airlines, that the way they're currently structured could not and will not benefit you in the long run in any meaningful way. Now, am I being outrageously harsh? No. Look at the numbers. The numbers speak louder than words. Now, have some of you been able to redeem your miles? Yes, but let me ask you, how hard did you try? How long did you try? And what was the redemption level you had to use in order to get that seat? Pretty crazy. So, in any case, things to think about. But those of you who are sitting there watching me, who are holding on to miles, not really a good idea. Trust me. They're only going to be devalued by the day, and it's happening as we speak. All right, who else is saying hello here? Hold on a second, I'm scrolling down. Okay, hello Bob. Hello Karen, hello. Okay, Gail says, speaking about being respectful, when we were at Pearl Harbor, there were a lot of Oriental people taking selfies with a thumbs up. It gave me the impression that they were proud of their attack on us. I felt that was very disrespectful. Well, Gail, I disagree. I mean, I understand the whole idea of the selfie problem. I brought it up. But in many cases, they may have been paying their respects to the family members that they lost to. I don't really think that, 80 years after World War II, people are going over, yeah, got it. No, I don't think so. But I do think there should be a ban on selfie sticks and posing for selfies. I mean, first of all, if you're on the Arizona Memorial, that's a sacred site. That's where that battleship sank with so many people dying immediately that day on December 7th. So that's something we have to address. Hello from New York. Hello, Cindy. Kristen, hey, I just saw you. Nice to say hi, Kristen. Thanks for tuning in. All right, Robin says, again, Southwest. Well, Robin, it doesn't have to be again, Southwest. Every airline has a software issue and a technology issue. And until they get better systems with backups that allow for, what a concept, human overriding. That's right, manual override. What a concept, right? Think about this. Today, pilots don't fly planes, they monitor systems. That's why we get in trouble. When they have to fly the plane, they don't have experience flying the plane. Get back, hands on, fly the plane. Train on that. Exercise on that. Be prepared for it. Because when the systems don't work, you're in trouble. Look what happened in San Francisco a couple of years ago with Asiana, right? Beautiful day, 20/20 visibility, and an Asiana 777 was coming in for an approach to San Francisco. The instrument landing system wasn't working. That shouldn't be a problem. It was 20/20 visibility, right? Cessnas fly in that. And they hit the dock because the pilots were so inexperienced in actually doing what? Flying the actual plane. And there were 3 of them in the cockpit that day. I rest my case. Okay. Okay. Oh, Sean Kelly says, I can remember the last time you went into a tank, in that case on a training mission, and they had to bring the whole shebang to a halt. So yeah, I know why too. I'll tell you that story. I was a correspondent for Newsweek doing a story on the 4th Division of the U.S. Army out in Fort Carson, Colorado. That's a motorized division. And the night before, I happened to call my mom. She was in New York. And she said, how are you feeling? I said, I think I'm coming down with a cold, but I'll be okay. And as most mothers do, she worried. And she said, well, you should take this and take this and take this. I said, I'll take some aspirin, I'll be fine. We're leaving at 5 in the morning to go downrange on a tank. And with flamethrowers and bazookas and F-4s dropping bombs. And we have the entire mission, we have the entire division on maneuvers. And I'm not making this story up. I couldn't. There are too many witnesses. We're in the middle of the mud in Colorado. And they're bombing everything, and we're in foxholes, and we're in tanks. And then all of a sudden, somebody pops up with red flags. And that in the manual said immediate ceasefire during the mission. And me, this journalist, I've got my notebook out. Okay, what screwed up? What just happened? And we see this car come up, and the lieutenant comes out of the car and walks up to the major. The major walks up to the colonel. The colonel walks up to the general, and they all turn around and they start walking up to me. Me. And all of a sudden the lieutenant said, Mr. Greenberg? Yes. Call your mother. That is a true story. That didn't happen yesterday. I didn't have to do that. But talk about one of the great embarrassing moments in front of 30,000 troops where they canceled the entire maneuver so that I could call my mother who was worried about me having a cold. Yeah, there's a longer backstory to that, but that actually happened when I was at Newsweek. Um, Camilla, I agree with you on the FTC. Miles equals accounts payable. Yes, that's right. They owe us. Uh, Scott says, happy 150th anniversary to the Holland America line. Right back at them. Listen, anybody who's ever been in Rotterdam should go over to the old New York hotel. That's where all the immigrants went the night before they got on those original Holland America ships to voyage to the New World. The hotel is still there. It's been beautifully restored. And of course, the Rotterdam, which retired, I believe, in 95, is there now as a floating hotel. And that you should see that ship because it actually looks like a ship. It doesn't look like a condominium that somehow fell over and floats. It's got the great lines, the curves, the wide promenade decks. Truly an ocean liner. It's right there in Rotterdam. Okay. Scott says, is 1 hour enough to transfer planes in Dublin at 5:15 in the morning, Chicago to Naples, arriving at 5? Okay, I see what you're saying. Normally I would tell you it's not, but if you're flying eastbound, you're probably going to get in early. And if you're going to get in early, you're transferring what? From one Aer Lingus flight to another. That's pretty easy. Not from one terminal to another. It's right there, and you should be okay. All right? Now, would I want to do a 1 hour transfer? Not really. So there's one more thing you've got to do. And if you don't do it, don't come crying to me. When you get to your connecting gate in Dublin, get your bag tags, which are barcoded, and go to the gate agent and say, can you please confirm that these tags have been scanned, sorted, and boarded? Or do what I do now. I'm in love with my Apple AirTags. I've developed an actual emotional relationship with them. They actually miss me. They tell me that they want to see me. They tell me I'm not there anymore. It's great. And you know what? I know where my bags are sometimes better than the airlines do thanks to those. But seriously, no matter what, even with the AirTags, I always ask that question at the connecting gate. Can you please tell me, check on your screen, that the bags have been scanned, sorted, and boarded? They can do that. Okay. Winston says, we flew Southwest yesterday and our plane was 5 minutes early. All right, Winston, what time was your flight? That's what I want to know. Okay, you went to Orlando to Dallas. Okay, but I still want to know what time the flight was. All right, that would be very helpful. All right, still doesn't take away from the fact that the systems that they have don't have adequate performing backup systems in a seamless way. That's what we need. All right, let's go over here for 1 second. Other people are checking in. All right, we got love from Tanzania. Okay, what was my worst in the air experience? I have a couple, but relative to how many days I fly, very few. I was on a flight from TWA from Paris to JFK, from Charles de Gaulle to JFK, and they got the wrong weight and balance. So when that person came on the plane before they pushed back and gave the captain the weight, the fuel load, and everything on the plane, they didn't calculate right. And by doing that, they didn't set their takeoff speed right. They didn't set their flaps right. And this is on a 747. And as we ran down the runway at Charles de Gaulle, I'm one of those guys you don't want to sit next to on a plane because I got my watch out. I know what the takeoff times should be between V1, VR, and V2. V1 is the decision speed at which the captain has to decide, are we taking off or not? Are we aborting? VR is the optimal speed that you rotate. And V2, for those people who ever get that far, is the speed at which the plane's going to take off by itself based on its speed and lift. Well, we were approaching V1 when I heard what sounded to be loud explosions. What it was we were going down the runway, not fast enough to take off and running out of runway, and we rotated just in time for the tires. Remember how many tires are on a 747? To hit those runway lights and blow out. So now we're full load of fuel and we're flying to New York with how many tires operational? We didn't know. Now, the passengers didn't know it. I happen to know the crew. They swore me to secrecy because they didn't want to panic on the plane. We made a safe emergency landing at JFK, but it was a very anxiety-ridden 7.5 hours, I can assure you. My second worst airline experience was on a British Airways flight going from London to New York. I had a camera crew on board that day, And they were actually in the cockpit shooting. We had permission to do that. I was downstairs when this happened. And there's something on every advanced technology plane today called the CAS, a collision avoidance system. It's an interactive system where both planes have to have the system working. They talk to each other electronically, and if they determine they're on a collision course, it'll tell one pilot, dive right and climb right, or dive left and climb left, and that's what it's supposed to do. But it's interactive, that both systems have to work. And for whatever reason, our system wasn't working that day, but we didn't know it. And my cameraman was sitting in the jump seat behind the pilot, looking through his viewfinder, seeing another plane coming right at us. He told the captain, next thing you know, we went, woo, and just missed it, right? That was the first thing that happened. But then came the second thing that happened. We're now flying towards Kennedy, and we're about an hour out, and we're hitting serious weather, and serious fog, and serious clouds. And the captain basically says they've just closed Kennedy. We have enough fuel to basically stay in this position to see if they'll reopen the airport, or we're going to have to divert to Boston. I mean, nobody wanted to do that, but those were the choices. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we heard a big explosion. That was a lightning bolt hitting the nose of the plane, knocking out all of our avionics. And then we saw something, it was out of a movie. I saw this blue light coming through the cabin, all the way through the cabin. That was the lightning bolt, and it exited out the tail. At that point, all the captain had left was his manual artificial horizon and his radio. He declared an emergency. They opened Kennedy, and we actually landed. But here's the crazy part. After we landed, the BA folks said, come with us. They wanted to show me something. And I walked down on the tarmac, went out of the back of the plane, and I looked up, and there, where that lightning bolt exited, was the hole the size of a large grapefruit, just blown through the metal. Needless to say, that plane didn't run for a couple of days. So that was the craziest one. There have been others, but those are my two of the greatest hits, and I live to tell the story, so here I am. Okay. Do I see any more airline mergers or changes in hub and spoke? I do. Look, we have to wait to see what's going to happen with JetBlue and Spirit. It's beginning to look like it might go through. JetBlue is going to have to give up, I think, some slots, some landing operations, maybe some routes. They may probably have to give up their Northeast Alliance with American to make it happen. Let's see what happens. All right, keep on going here. More Tanzania folks saying hi. We love that. Here's one. What do Americans prefer more, leisure travel or adventure? I have no idea. I like both. I like both. That's why, by the way, the Antarctic expedition cruises aboard certain ships like Silver Sea are so great, because you've got luxury and you have adventure, right? You're out there kayaking in sub-freezing weather, in most adverse conditions, but beautiful, and you're coming back to the ship where you're greeted by your butler. I mean, disconnect, but I like the connection. All right. So now, let me scroll back down for some more before we get to somewhere else. Hold on. Okay. Oh, Winston says his Southwest flight from Orlando to Dallas was at 11:50 in the morning. You lucked out. You lucked out. Okay, now let's go to the photo of the week, shall we? I like this photo. There's a story to it, of course. All right, done by Don Cowan. And Don writes, on our recent trip to Tromsø, Norway, we were amazed at the natural beauty and enjoyed it even from our hotel room with this amazing view from the Arctic Cathedral in the distance. You know, Norway doesn't get enough shout-outs. I love Bergen. I like Tromsø. I love the fjords. Oh, my God. You know, base yourself in Oslo and then head out. It's great. Don, thank you for that photograph. Love the light, which, by the way, you have everything in there, right? You got the ship, you got the mountains, you got everything. If you think you've got a photo that qualifies as the photo of the week, that's an easy one. Just send it in, peter@petergreenberg.com, and if we agree with you, we post it. All right. We asked you this week, by the way, what are your favorite travel hacks for saving money on the road? This is what some of you wrote. Flavor packets for water with a filtration system water bottle. If tap water is potable, it's generally free. All right. Jim says, when in a foreign country, hire a driver per day, saves on money in the long run, and they look like a bodyguard. I don't know about your experience with drivers. So no pickpockets. Also, be frugal when you travel. One carry-on bag limit being, oh, okay, for men, one blazer fits all. Women, that little black dress is enough. I love little black dresses, but that's another story. Okay. Lorena says, on last year's trip to Yellowstone and Grand Teton, booked rooms with kitchenettes. We could pack a breakfast and lunch to enjoy nice park scenery and then enjoy dinner at a local restaurant or get takeout to relax in our room. You know, I'm a big fan of that. Anytime I come into another city, I always stop at the local grocery store on the way to the hotel. I either empty the minibar or ask them to get rid of the minibar, put it in a small refrigerator, and then I just get what I want and save a lot of money in the process and a lot of stress. Because as I said it before, I'll say it again, at most hotel minibars, if you look at that $9 Snickers bar long enough, you're going to eat it and you're going to hate yourself and the hotel. Okay. Okay, Marilyn says, I like taking driving road trips with friends. We share the cost of gas. Okay, that's cool, but you better like them, right? I mean, if you really want, it's funny. For men or for women, if you meet somebody new and you're just starting to date, the big eliminator will be when you take your first trip together. That will determine whether you marry them or kill them. And earlier the trip, the better, by the way. You find that faster. Travel has the notorious ability to figure out who's a human being and who isn't. How you handle pressure, how you handle stress when you travel. And if you can handle the stress of travel, then you probably can handle the stress of a relationship. It's true. My wife now travels with me everywhere, and thank God she does. Okay. Phil says, forget the hotel breakfast if it's not included in the room rate. A local cafe will offer you much better food at a lower price. Agreed. Go to grocery store, says Donna, for edible souvenirs. I agree. Peter says, I use booking.com to find the lodging with the breakfast included. That's right. It's exactly what Phil was saying. Good for you. All right. I tend to hit the supermarkets. Again, see, we're doing supermarket shopping. That was from Scott. Judy says, public transportation when possible. Well, listen, there are a number of countries in Europe right now that are offering public transportation now for free as an opportunity to get a lot of cars off the road. So take advantage of that. Okay. Okay, Ann says, I go to a fancy restaurant at lunch if possible, less expensive than dinner. Agreed. All right. Colleen says, here in London, you can change your money at the post office. No lines and no bank fee or other charges. It is simply the legal rate of exchange. Love it. Okay. Minnie says public transport. I agree. Julie says the first is electronic SIM cards that sells rock bottom price data packages. The second, if changing money in Argentina, use Western Union. Wow. Western Union. Candygram for Mongo. Okay, we're dating ourselves. You link a U.S. debit card online, then pick up cash at any Western Union branch, and there are hundreds. You get a 50% higher rate than the black market. Who knew? Okay. Tim, this one I love. Tim says, never buy anything in an airport. Get a credit card with priority lounge access and eat, drink for free. One small problem with that, Tim, if you can get into the lounge. I have not been at an airport in the last 3 months where I could get into a lounge that I was already a member of. That's how bad it is. Okay. Emily says she packs her own granola bars and snacks. Okay, I got it. Barbara says buy a styrofoam cooler for your room and car to store leftovers and drinks, Ziploc bags. Yeah, you got to travel with Ziploc bags. My wife does that all the time. It's great. Okay. And all right, so we got this. Now, we have other questions you guys have asked. Gunther says, I'm planning a trip to Madrid leaving end of September and returning from Paris in mid-October. When should I buy my tickets? Well, right now, we're not ready for that yet. You want to do that sometime late May, early June, right? You want to go about 54 to 60 days out. And remember, you don't have to necessarily go from the United States nonstop. Remember the advice I gave about the Saturday newspapers in London? Check them out. Okay. Diane says, what are the tech issues Southwest is having compared to other airlines? Actually, they're having the same tech issues. They just happen to erupt at different times. It's software that fails with no backup or backup that fails. We got to do better than that. Okay. Scott says, passport expired and didn't realize it. What's the fastest time frame I can get it renewed in? Well, Scott, that all gets down to how much you want to spend. If you go through the normal procedure of, applying and sending it through the post office, you're dealing anywhere from 10 to 13 weeks, if you're lucky. Now, there are a number of passport expediting services out there. There's one that I like. I use it all the time. It's called It's Easy. They're in New York, but I'm sure they have a website that you can find. It might even be itseasy.com. Those expediting services can cost you anywhere from $200 to like $900, depending on how desperate you are and how fast you need to leave the country. You will have to show evidence of a purchased airline itinerary to prove the point that you're leaving when you say you're leaving, but they can walk you through all the nuts and bolts and bells and whistles. But if you're willing to spend the money for the expedited service, you'll get it. The expedited service that's offered by the passport agencies, meaning the U.S. passport agencies, may only shave a week or two off of that 10 to 12 week period. Just be aware of that. But for everybody else, if you're that desperate to leave, do it. Again, if you've got less than 6 months validity on your passport, do it, because you're not going to be able to leave anyway to many countries, right? For some countries like South Africa, if you don't have at least 2 free pages on your passport with no stamps in them whatsoever, you can't get there either. So always get the 52-pager, not the 24-pager, and do it as soon as you can. All right, let me keep going here for a second. Hold on. I'm scrolling down. Gail says, my husband and I did a 10-day cross-country trip several years ago, and we're still married and talking to each other. All right, Gail. Okay, Terry says, I'm going to camps in both Ruaha and Nyeri parks in southern Tanzania this October. Have I been to either? I have. By the way, the southern part of Tanzania doesn't get a lot of love as opposed to Arusha and Kilimanjaro. So yes, you'll have a great time. Here what we have here. Greetings from Iris in New York. Hello, Iris. Speaking of running out of runway, my most interesting flight was Cusco, Peru. 11,200 feet. To La Paz, Bolivia, 14,000 feet. The rattling speed and takeoff landing time required at those elevations. Great airline with great safety record, but the elevation made this feel like we'd never ever take off. Talk about airlift, we know it. Also, the sheer landing speed at La Paz, holy moly. Most South American commercial pilots are old military, so we were in good hands. You'll find the same thing in New Guinea. You'll find the same thing in parts of Borneo. I mean, over there, they don't fly IFR, which most people think means instrument flight rules. IFR there means I follow the river. They know what they're doing. Same thing in Alaska, by the way. All right. Now, one more thing I want to bring to your attention. As you know, our hidden Aegean is now on the air. That's Turkey, of course. And you can see that on PBS. Check your local listings, as well as Amazon Prime and Apple TV Plus. And a reminder that our hidden Ireland is now also on Amazon Prime and TV and Apple TV Plus. Roll the trailer.
It is a land forged on the wild frontier between the old and new world, built upon a destiny of freedom and self-determination. Sitting on the westernmost edge of Europe, its lyrical green valleys bordered by soaring coastal cliffsides. It's a small island, but with a large influence, thanks to millions of immigrants who brought their traditions with them across the globe. And while the culture may feel familiar, if you dig past the surface, there's a brave new and old world, an emerald isle with scholars and saints, poets and politicians, stories and those who sing them. 2 countries on one island, intertwined in history, mythology, and hope. This is what I came for, a rich land where every step reveals a new surprise, often hiding in plain sight. I'm Peter Greenberg, and this is Hidden Ireland.
Again, Apple TV Plus and Amazon Prime. Hidden Ireland, of course, Hidden Saudi Arabia, Hidden Canary Islands, Hidden Aegean, all available now on Amazon and Apple TV Plus. Some more questions coming in. Here's one that says, is the Sea-Jet ferry from Athens to Mykonos as bad as the reviews say? Well, let's put this in perspective. Why are you on the Seajet fare to begin with? To go from A to B. Are you there for the rich Corinthian leather? Are you there for the fine dining? Are you there for the pool activity? No, it's a ferry. Take it, relax, you'll be fine. All right, from our friends in Tanzania, they're watching World Tour Tanzania. Thank you again for saying that. Let's go down here. Robert says, I've had great luck with American Airlines Advantage, one to Cape Town and one to Tokyo. You know what? You just said it, Robert. You got lucky. And I wish you more luck. There's no point in having miles if you can't redeem them. All right. Pennywell is saying hi from West Hollywood. More love from Tanzania. Here we go. Philip's coming from Tanzania as well. We got lots of folks in Tanzania today. We love it. All right, let's go back to a couple more comments before we have to say off. We're going down here. One more note, folks. As I said before at the opening, we're here in Everett, Washington, in Snohomish County. I highly recommend that Flying Heritage and Air Combat Museum here in Payne Field. And if you get a chance to fly from Payne Field, you should do it. I want to thank Adrian and Gregory for showing me the ropes yesterday at the museum, allowing me to sit in that B-25 and then drive the tank. I felt like Austin Powers, but that's another story. Actually, what I really felt was they made me wear the helmet. And when I'm sitting in that tank, for those of us old enough to remember the 1988 presidential campaign, I felt just like Michael Dukakis' career-ending move. But I got to drive the tank. That's what counts. All right, guys, listen, the radio show this week, coming from a surprise destination. I'll tell you that in the first hour, you're going to be regaled with stories that you've never heard before from one person you might remember and in a completely different location. How's that for a tease? So we're getting on another airplane today to get there. In the meantime, have a great rest of your week. I'll see you on the radio. I'll see you on television. And of course, I'll see you next week from a remote, distant location somewhere around the world. And when I say remote, we're talking about 8,000 miles from where I am right now. I'll see you next week. Have a great rest of the week, guys.